Omar Chronicle Part 6, The Final Straw. The days following Chief Okafor's funeral passed like a blur. Relatives came and went. Friends offered condolences. Business associates paid their respects. Flowers filled every corner of the mansion. Yet despite the crowd, Omar felt an overwhelming emptiness. The man she had spent most of her life trying to reach was gone. The father she had finally reconciled with was gone. And somehow, that reality still felt unreal. Many nights she found herself replaying their final conversation. His apology. His confession. His last words. "I'm proud of you. I love you too. Thank you." Those words became treasures she carried deep within her heart. No one could ever take them away. A week after the funeral, the family's lawyer requested an urgent meeting. His tone sounded unusually serious. Immediately, Omar sensed trouble. He arrived at the mansion alongside Daniel. Several company executives were already present. So was Chaik. He sat quietly in a corner, avoiding eye contact. That alone was suspicious. The lawyer cleared his throat. "There are matters concerning the estate that must be addressed." Everyone nodded, expecting routine legal discussions. Instead, the lawyer's expression darkened. "The situation is worse than we initially believed." The room became silent. Omar frowned. "What situation?" The lawyer opened a thick file. Then began explaining. And with every sentence, the atmosphere grew heavier. Years of financial mismanagement had devastated the company. Several accounts were nearly empty. Some investments had completely disappeared. By the time the lawyer finished speaking, disbelief filled the room. Omar struggled to process everything. "How?" The answer came immediately. Everyone looked toward Chaik. The silence itself was an accusation. Chaik lowered his head, unable to defend himself. Because there was no defense. Only truth. Painful truth. The lawyer continued. "There is more." Omar felt a knot forming in her stomach. More? How could there be more? The lawyer turned another page. Then spoke words that stunned everyone. "The family mansion has been sold." Silence. Complete silence. For several seconds nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Then Omar blinked. "What?" The lawyer repeated himself. "The property was sold 6 months ago." Shock swept through the room. Daniel immediately sat forward. "Sold to whom?" The lawyer provided the details. The answer hardly mattered. What mattered was the fact itself. The house was gone. The ancestral home. The place Chief Okafor had spent decades building. The place where generations of memories lived. Sold. Omar slowly turned toward Chaik. For the first time since the meeting began, he looked directly at her. The shame on his face was unmistakable. "Is it true?" Her voice was calm. Dangerously calm. Chaik nodded. "Omar, is it true?" His shoulders slumped. "Yes." The single word felt like a hammer blow. Omar closed her eyes, trying to remain composed, trying to control the storm inside her. "You sold our father's house." "I needed money." The explanation only deepened the wound. "For what?" Chaik looked away. By the end of the meeting, the truth was clear. The empire Chief Okafor had built over decades had been nearly destroyed. Not by strangers. Not by competitors. Not by economic hardship. But by his own son. The son he had favored. The son he had defended. The son he believed would continue his legacy. The irony was painful. That evening, Omar stood alone in the mansion's garden. The same garden where she had once begged her father to love her. The same garden where he had admitted he could never separate her from his grief. The same garden where years of heartbreak had unfolded. Now it would soon belong to someone else. A stranger. The thought hurt more than she expected. Not because she wanted the property, but because it represented something deeper. It represented her father, his dreams, his sacrifices, his life's work. And now it was slipping away. Daniel found her standing there, quietly staring into the distance. Without speaking, he joined her. For several moments, neither said anything. Then he gently asked, "What are you thinking?" Omar sighed. "That this is exactly what father feared." Daniel nodded. Chief Okafor had spent his final months watching everything unravel. Perhaps he had known. Perhaps he had seen the end approaching. "What will you do?" The question lingered in the evening air. Omar didn't answer immediately. Because she honestly didn't know. Walking away would be easier. Far easier. She had her own family. Her own successful life. Her own business interest. She owed nothing to anyone. Especially after everything she had endured. Yet something inside her refused to abandon what remained. The following morning, Omar requested a complete review of the estate. The process took several days. When the final report arrived, the picture was bleak. Most of the wealth was gone. The company was barely surviving. Numerous debts remained unpaid. Several employees had not received salaries. Investors were threatening legal action. The situation appeared hopeless. Many people advised her to leave. Start fresh. Protect your own family. Let the company collapse. Those suggestions were practical, reasonable, even sensible. But Omar couldn't do it. Because every time she considered walking away, she remembered her father's final words. "Thank you." She remembered the pride in his eyes. And somehow, she knew what she needed to do. A week later, she called a meeting. Executives filled the conference room. Everyone expected bad news. Instead, Omar stood at the front of the room. Calm. Confident. She looked around the room. Then spoke. "We are not giving up." The words immediately captured everyone's attention. "This company may be wounded. But it is not dead." Several executives exchanged surprised glances. Omar continued. "There will be sacrifices. There will be challenges. There will be difficult days." Her voice remained steady. "But we will rebuild." For the first time in months, hope appeared in the room. Later that evening, Daniel sat beside her in their living room. The twins were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet. "You've made your decision." Omar nodded. "Yes." Daniel smiled. "I figured." She laughed softly. "Was it that obvious?" "Very." The truth was simple. She couldn't abandon her father's legacy. Several days later, Omar returned to the old mansion one final time. The sale would soon be completed. New owners would take possession. The chapter would officially end. She walked slowly through the empty rooms. Remembering. The dining room where she first met her father. The staircase she had climbed as a frightened teenager. The living room where she had celebrated graduation alone. The garden where years of pain had unfolded. Every corner held memories. Some painful. Some beautiful. All important. Finally, she entered her father's study. The room remained largely untouched. Omar sat quietly in his chair. For several minutes, she simply looked around. Then her eyes landed on something unusual. A locked drawer. One she had never noticed before. Curious, she searched the desk. Eventually she found a key. The drawer opened. Inside rested several documents. Letters. Photographs. and one sealed envelope. On the front, written in her father's handwriting, were 4 words. For my daughter, Oma. Her breath caught. Slowly, she picked up the envelope. Oma stared at the envelope in her hands. The room suddenly felt smaller. Dust floated lazily through the sunlight streaming from the window. The old study carried traces of her father everywhere. For a long moment, she simply held it. Because she knew this would be the last thing her father would ever say to her. Slowly, she broke the seal. Inside was a neatly folded letter. Several pages long. The familiar handwriting instantly brought tears to her eyes. With trembling fingers, she unfolded it and began to read. My dear Oma. If you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer here. I spent many years saying the wrong things to you. And even more years saying nothing at all. So before I leave this world completely, I want to leave you the truth. The truth I should have spoken long ago. First, I need you to know something important. I loved you. Not as much as I should have. Not as openly as I should have. Not as faithfully as a father should love his daughter. But I loved you. Even during the years when I acted otherwise. Even during the years when bitterness blinded me. The problem was never you. The problem was me. Tears blurred Oma's vision. She paused briefly to wipe her eyes. Then continued reading. For years, I blamed you for a tragedy you did not create. I allowed grief to become an excuse. I allowed pain to become an excuse. I allowed weakness to become an excuse. And because of that, I hurt someone who deserved love. Someone who deserved protection. Someone who deserved a father. You. If I could relive my life, I would choose differently. I would attend every graduation proudly. I would celebrate every achievement. I would tell you how remarkable you are. I would tell you how proud I am. But life does not offer second chances. So I can only ask for forgiveness. And pray that the little time we shared at the end was enough for you to know the truth. Oma covered her mouth. The tears came freely now. Years of longing. Years of hurt. Years of unanswered questions. All pouring out at once. Yet she continued reading. There is something else you need to know. For many years, I convinced myself that Chike would carry my legacy. I wanted it to be true. I needed it to be true. But deep down, I always knew the truth. The strongest child I had was you. The wisest child I had was you. The most responsible child I had was you. And unfortunately, I realized that truth far too late. Oma lowered her head. A sob escaped her lips. Those were words she had waited a lifetime to hear. Words that could never fully erase the past. But words that healed wounds she thought would remain forever. She took a deep breath and continued. The next section of the letter immediately caught her attention. If circumstances unfolded the way I feared they might, then much of the company may already be damaged. The family property may be gone. The finances may be in ruins. If that is the case, there is something you must know. Several years ago, before my illness became serious, I established a private investment account. Very few people knew about it. Not even Chike. The account was created because I worried about the future of the company. I worried about irresponsible decisions. And I feared everything I built could one day disappear. Inside the attached documents, you will find information regarding those investments. If they remain untouched, they should be substantial enough to rebuild what was lost. Oma froze. Her heart skipped. She quickly looked through the contents of the envelope. Beneath the letter were additional documents. Bank records. Investment certificates. Ownership agreements. Several legal papers. Her eyes widened. The figures were enormous. Far larger than she expected. Far larger than anyone had imagined. She returned to the letter. I leave those assets to you. Not because you are my daughter. Though that would be reason enough. I leave them to you because you earned my trust. The trust one should have given you years ago. Use them wisely. Use them to help your family. Use them to rebuild if rebuilding is possible. Or walk away if walking away is wiser. Whatever decision you make, I know it will be the right one. Because I finally learned something important. You are stronger than I ever was. Fresh tears filled her eyes. The old man had spent his final days seeing her clearly. Perhaps for the first time. And now his final gift was not money. Not property. Not inheritance. It was faith. Faith in her. She turned to the final page. The last words her father would ever write. There is one final thing I want you to remember. For years, I believed your arrival destroyed my family. I was wrong. My mistakes damaged my family. My choices damaged my family. Not you. The truth is this. Your arrival saved what remained. Without you, I would have died angry. Without you, I would have died bitter. Without you, I would have died alone. Instead, I died forgiven. And that is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. Thank you. Take care of Daniel. Take care of my grandsons. And most importantly, take care of yourself. I love you, Oma. Always. Father. The letter ended. Oma sat silently. Unable to move. Unable to speak. For several minutes, the only sound in the room was her quiet crying. Not tears of pain. Not entirely. But tears of healing. Tears of a daughter who had finally received the words she spent her entire life waiting to hear. Later that evening, she returned home. Daniel immediately noticed something had changed. The moment she entered the living room, he stood. What happened? Without speaking, she handed him the letter. He read it slowly. Carefully. By the time he finished, his own eyes were moist. He loved you. Oma nodded. Yes. Daniel wrapped his arms around her. And for a while, neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. The following week, the lawyers verified everything. The investments were real. The assets were intact. And the value was even greater than anticipated. News spread quickly among the executives. Hope returned. The possibility of rebuilding suddenly seemed real. Not easy. But real. For the first time since Chief Okafor's death, people began believing in the future again. A few days later, Oma stood before the company's leadership team. The same room where she had promised not to give up. Only now she carried something more powerful than determination. She carried a plan. A realistic path forward. As she looked around the room, she felt something unexpected. Purpose. The company would not be rebuilt overnight. The damage was too severe. The morning after the lawyers confirmed the existence of Chief Okafor's secret investments, Oma stood in front of the large glass windows of her office. Below, the city was already awake. People hurried to work. Cars filled the roads. Life continued moving forward. Just as it always did. For a moment, she thought about everything that had happened. The frightened girl who had arrived at her father's mansion years ago. The young woman who had spent her life chasing acceptance. The daughter who had endured rejection. The wife. The mother. The caregiver. And now, the leader of a struggling empire. Life had brought her to a place she never imagined. Yet strangely, she felt ready. The first few months were difficult. The company's problems ran deeper than anyone initially realized. Every day seemed to bring a new challenge. But Oma refused to be discouraged. She approached the situation the same way she had approached every challenge in her life. Patiently. She listened before making decisions. She studied every report. She met with employees personally. Most importantly, she restored something the company had lost years ago. Trust. The company slowly began regaining its reputation. And with every success, Oma felt closer to fulfilling the promise she had silently made to her father. At home, Daniel remained her greatest supporter. Many evenings, after long meetings and exhausting workdays, she would return home tired. Yet the moment David and Daniel Jr. rushed into her arms, much of the stress disappeared. The twins were growing quickly. Far too quickly. Nearly a year after Chief Okafor's death, the company finally began showing significant improvement. The future looked brighter than it had in years. Unfortunately, success attracted attention, including the attention of someone she had hoped to avoid. Chike. For almost a year, he had remained distant, rarely contacting anyone. Then suddenly, he reappeared. One afternoon, Omar's secretary informed her of an unexpected visitor. She looked up from her desk. "Who is it?" The secretary hesitated. "Your brother." Omar sighed quietly. "Send him in." Moments later, Chike entered. He looked different. Older. More worn down. The confidence that once bordered on arrogance had largely disappeared. Yet there was still something familiar in his expression. "Uma." She nodded politely. "Chike." Neither moved. Neither smiled. Finally, Chike sat down. "I've been hearing good things." Uma waited. "The company is recovering." "Yes." He nodded. Father would have been proud. The statement surprised her. For a brief moment, she wondered whether he had genuinely changed. Then he continued. "I think it's time we discuss my position." There it was. The real reason for his visit. Omar leaned back slightly. "What position?" "My place in the company." The room became quiet. Because both of them understood the reality. The company was recovering because of her work, her leadership, her sacrifice. Chike cleared his throat. "I am still father's son." Omar said nothing. "And I believe I deserve a role." Finally, she spoke. "You had a role." The words landed heavily. Chike's expression tightened. "Uma." "No." Her voice remained calm, but firm. "You had opportunities. You had trust. You had support." Her eyes never left his. "And you destroyed all of them." The truth hung in the air. Painful. For a long moment, Chike stared at the floor. Then something unexpected happened. His shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to leave him. "You sound like him." Omar frowned. "What?" "Father." His voice softened. Near the end, the statement caught her off guard. She remembered their private conversation in the hospital. The one nobody else heard. Perhaps something important had been said. Perhaps more than she realized. Chike looked away. "When I visited him before he died." His voice cracked slightly. "He told me I spent my entire life expecting rewards without earning them." Omar remained silent. He said I confused privilege with entitlement. The words clearly still haunted him. He told me I was wasting my life. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Chike laughed bitterly. The worst part is that he was right. Omar studied her brother carefully. For the first time in many years, she saw genuine regret. Not excuses. Not blame. Regret. "What do you want, Chike?" The question was simple. He thought for a moment. Then answered. "I want a chance." Mo looked at him. "A chance to do what?" His response came quietly. "To become someone father wouldn't be ashamed of." The room fell silent. Because beneath all the mistakes was a son who had lost his father. A son carrying his own regrets. Several days passed before Edeora made her decision. She thought carefully. Consulted trusted advisors. Discussed it with Daniel. Prayed about it. Then finally, she called Chike. When he arrived, she handed him a file. Confused, he opened it. Inside were documents outlining a position. Not an executive role. An entry-level management position. One he would have to earn. One he would have to work for. Chike stared at the papers. Then looked up. You trust me? Omar smiled faintly. Not yet. For the first time, Chike laughed. A genuine laugh. Perhaps the first genuine laugh they had shared in years. But I'm willing to give you an opportunity. Tears filled his eyes. He nodded. I won't waste it. As he left her office, Omar stood beside the window once more. Watching the city below. Watching life continue. Watching new chapters begin. The company was recovering. Her family was thriving. Her father's legacy was healing. And as Omar thought about her father's final letter, she smiled. The girl who had once arrived at a mansion seeking acceptance had become something far greater than she ever imagined. She had become the person who could offer others the same grace she had once desperately needed herself. And that, more than wealth or success, was the true measure of her strength. Far away, in a small frame sitting on her office shelf, was a photograph. Chief Okafor. Ngozi. A younger Chike. And a more recent photograph of Omar with Daniel and the twins. A story of forgiveness. A story of redemption. And though many chapters had already been written, life still had more surprises waiting ahead. Because the future often rewards those who refuse to give up. And Omar had never been the kind of woman who gave up. The final end. Thank you for sticking till the end. Do not forget to like and subscribe to my channel.